Guys ready to get started again? Are you ready to get started again?
Yeah. 5 minutes.
Your
Let's land this
last
plane.
session. Get as much as you can out.
So from a couple of the questions that came out during the break, I wanted to try to offer you some insight just that's come out from the questions. Somebody was asking me, how do I respond in this moment? And I realized in the moment that I think we make decisions from more than one place. Here's what I mean. Imagine there's 3 boxes up here. Box 1 is this decision making I'm making comes from this place. This is from my pre-existing talent. Meaning, remember, God wired you like this. Coming out of the womb, you were already wired this way. So you have this pre-existing talent. Now, it's called talent because why? What we're saying is there's promise there, right? There's potential there. But is it at a super level yet? No. So it's talent. And I did nothing to earn it. I didn't do 100 push-ups. I didn't write God a $100 check. There's none of that. You can't. This is just raw talent. You either have it or you don't. Sometimes I make decisions in my life because I have talent to do stuff. Maybe you're incredibly good at singing and you pick a career that uses your voice. Well, you would do that because you have pre-existing talent. Does that make sense? Okay, that's box 1. Box 2 is I have an acquired skill. Now, that's very different than box 1. This, I choose. I could decide that I want to become fantastic at longboard skateboarding. Now, no 15-year-old person should be messing around with longboard skateboarding, but I'm just saying, I could do that. And it would be a skill that I acquire. I could also go to school and get an accounting degree. And then I could trade that skill for a paycheck. But I make my decisions because I have the skill that's within my capacity, and so I choose things. Does that make sense? Okay, box 2, this is acquired skill, different than box 1, primarily because that one I can't choose, I can only discover. This one I pick. Is that clear? Okay, box 3 this is the God box. As a pastor at church on the weekend, I can't tell you how many people we run across that say, hey, we just moved here from Seattle. And I go, wow, that's such a, what happened? They go, nope, God told us to come, so we moved. I'm like, so did your job transfer you or what? He goes, no, we're unemployed right now. We're just looking to figure out what's going on. And I sort of low-key have a little bit of a mini heart attack, and I'm like, okay, so that's awesome. Oh, I so hope you heard from him. Wow, right? Because, you just put your whole life on the ship and moved it down here. That's a big deal. But sometimes we make decisions because that's the conviction of our hearts, and we're fully committed to it. Does that make sense? So I think we got all 3 boxes. And sometimes we make decisions from either of those places, but the strongest decisions come from the ones where you can combine all those elements of your life. The strongest contribution in your life comes from places where you can put all this together. I have a sense from God that this is the right thing for me to do. I have skill that I have added to my pre-existing talent. And when you smash all those 3 things together, you really get a really strong driving force that moves you toward high contribution. But I want to make the distinction between those 3 things because somebody was talking to me about a birth order behavior. Oh, well, that sounds like a typical firstborn. I would know because I is one. Mm-hmm. But is a behavior that I display that you might attribute to being a firstborn, is that a talent? Or is that a learned skill or a learned behavior? It's a learned behavior. It's box 2, right? I didn't come out of the womb wired by God to behave like that. I learned that by my oneness. Because I'm not number 2, I'm number 1.
So annoying.
So you see how this is a skill thing? This is an acquired skill. I've learned this behavior. This is completely driven by innate talent that's pre-existing in your life. I just want to get your head in the frame of mind to think about those things.
Okay, so I have one too from the break.
Well, fine.
Okay. I thought about this last night. I almost jumped up here at the end as Alan was sharing when he had you guys look at your counterfeits. When you're looking at your counterfeits as a married couple, there's a nuance to be careful of, because that very counterfeit may be a wound that you have felt. Like, I have belief in my top 5, so that I'm stubborn, or that I really stick to a point, that I'm super black and white, that there's no gray in there, those kinds of things. So that could feel wounding to my husband, and he relates to the counterfeit. So then as a couple, when we're talking about the counterfeit, he might have a hard time seeing how that strength is really a strength. Does that make sense? It may bring up a wounding in your marriage when you're looking at those counterfeits in a way of, you understand the counterfeit, but yet you're not supposed to speak this counterfeit over one another. So there's a place with those counterfeits to be able to press into that a little bit more, to understand one another. So if that counterfeit of belief is a wounding place for my husband, by me just saying, well, that's not true, it's a counterfeit, you need to believe the truth about me, isn't going to heal him. Because then it makes me not self-aware that I do need to be aware that I can make someone feel that way, even though that's not my heart or my intent. So my heart isn't to run over people. It's not to use my belief in a way that I refuse to listen to anyone else, and I'm just going to stand strong on my beliefs. Like, that's not okay. So that's a place of growth and learning that I need to have in my belief, that I can utilize it as a blessing to others and not just a blessing to myself. Does that make sense? But then when Alan's talking to me and sees that counterfeit and feels like, but to me that counterfeit is true, but those people up there on stage were telling us to not speak that over you, but I feel like that hurts me and it's true. That he needs to be able to express to me, like, I can see how I have felt this way, and I'm sorry if I've hurt you by labeling you this way. Can we talk about what behaviors happen sometimes that make me feel hurt or unheard, or that only your perspective is the right perspective, and find some compromise in that? And so one of the things that was brought up is, what if those things were never spoken over me? My spouse does not speak that over me. I've never had a parent speak that over me, but yet I think it. I've thought that over myself. How do I do that when it's not just about someone not speaking it over me? Well, we have to remember that there is an enemy that hates you because you are the very image of God. There's an enemy that studies you and wants to bring demise to you. And the thing is that Satan cannot take your salvation, right? You're sealed. It's done. He can't. What can Satan do? He can rob you of your joy. He can keep you from expressing the very thing God has put in you to shine light in this earth. He can keep you from knowing the value that you bring, the joy that you bring, the purposefulness that you bring on this earth. So if he can come against you, if he can convince you to speak over yourself destruction, what does he come to do? Kill, steal, and destroy. So even if he can't get other people to agree with him to kill, steal, and destroy, he can plant in your own thoughts. And then what does God say? To capture every thought. Take every thought captive. So if you notice that you're saying over yourself the counterfeits, what I'm asking you to do is capture that thought, recognize you're doing it, and you take that thought to the Lord and you say, what do you say about this? and let the Lord speak healing over you. Let him speak truth over you. And then you can put that lie aside and or recognize really easily when that lie comes to mind, when it comes as a thought. Instead of you dwelling or thinking that thought is true, you say, nope, I'm not going there today. That is not true, because the Father in heaven who loves and adores me has told me the truth. So, okay, the end.
All right, so let's stay on this line about your inner monologue, about how you frame things and how you think things. What we're advocating for is that you and your thinking start to align itself with what God said is true about you. And what's conveniently accurate about the way the Strengths describes you is that it speaks of what can be great and what is awesome about the way that you're made. And I want to tell you why that's important. Because at any moment, okay, before I go there, I have to tell you a story. So there's an author in the Carolinas who works at a university. He's a tenured university professor. His name is Jonathan Haidt. He has written a book called The Happiness Hypothesis. He is a self-professed Jewish atheist. Now, why you have to include the Jewish piece if you're going to claim that you're an atheist, I'm not 100% sure, but I'll have that conversation with him another time. And so he represents world religions. That's what he teaches on at the university. And this book, The Happiness Hypothesis, is basically the 10 largest world religions curated around what do each of these religions have to say about happiness. And here you go, pick the one you want to roll with, and there you go. So I'm not advocating the book from a Christian perspective. What I'm telling you is I have a relentless curiosity to learn about motivation, and this gave me insight about that, and that's why I read it. Also, my brother was reading it, and he has slipped from Christianity, and I wanted to be able to have informed conversation with him that's a different conversation. Anyway, so in the book, Jonathan creates this hypothesis or this metaphor to help people understand slightly more sophisticated psychological concepts. And he proposes this metaphor. He says, you and I, we're like the riders. We have the rope and we have the stick in our hand. We're the rider. And your conscious mind, the deciding portion of you, like I want this, I don't like that, I'm making this decision and not that decision, that's us, that's the rider. The elephant that we're riding is all of the subconscious activity that's happening in your brain, filled up with all of your past experiences, all that's in your history, and the autonomous operating systems of your life, meaning your brain is managing the regular pumping of your heart, telling your lungs when to breathe, it's managing your circulatory system, like all that stuff is still happening, right? So all of that makes up the elephant. You with me so far? Okay, rider and elephant. When you and the elephant are in sync and the rider says, we want to turn left, well, then you turn the elephant left and we go left and everything's good. But on the day that you decide you want to go left and the elephant looks at you and it looks at left and it goes, yeah, we did that once before. That did not end up well. We're going to go straight. Guess which direction you're going in? You're going to go straight because you and the elephant are not the same size. You're not going to win that battle. That's why he sets up the metaphor that way. So what that's saying is your past experience, the autonomous systems of your life, and your growing up sort of training is actually making governing decisions for you that override your conscious intention. You following me? Okay. That piece is secondary information to the primary reason I wanted to tell you this story. Here's the primary reason I wanted to tell you that story. Turns out, the elephant feels that it's his job to constantly run its mouth and tell you about what he sees around you every day. The elephant is constantly running a monologue, and 80% of what the elephant says is negative. 80% of what the elephant says is negative. This is coming from a Jewish atheist who has spent his professional career studying humanity and all the religions and trying to understand how we make the decisions that we make. What I'm telling you now is We're the rider. That stuff is the elephant. And now the elephant is telling me about what's going on in my life all the time, every day. And 80% of what it's saying is telling me negative stuff. So let me give you an example. You're driving down the road to come in here, and there's 3 cars in front of you, and they're slowing down, they're behaving like idiots. And the elephant says to you, well, you know why they're in front of you, right? It's because you didn't stop twice at the back over there. Now, this is payback for what's happening over there. You don't deserve to get in there first. You're going to have to wait. He's running his mouth, telling you negative all the time. You know why that guy just pulled right in front of you right now? Because you're driving badly, or this is payoff for the other thing that you didn't do right. Running its mouth, telling you negative stuff, and it's 80% of the time. Okay, if that stuff is true, and I have to give some credence to his learning, right? If that stuff is true, then at least one voice that I'm hearing is telling me I suck 80% of the time. So what are the other voices? Well, there's my voice. And I'm not always the easiest on myself. I'm a little bit judgmental. I know I could do better. I'm always second-guessing my decisions. So I'm not exactly feeding myself positive thoughts either. That's voice number 2. There's the devil, who is known as our adversary, who the Bible says is constantly in the throne room before God making accusation about us and telling us where we're failing and why we're not winning. That's voice number 3. God's voice is voice number 4, telling you you are loved, you are saved, you are sealed, and you're a winner. 4 voices, 75% of them are telling me I'm not going to make it. 25% of them are telling me I will. So if this is the functional truth of what our lives are like every day, then I want to paint that picture because, for one, I want to stamp out what is reality for you and I. So if you find yourself carrying less than ideal thinking, I want to tell you where it's coming from. It's coming from one of those 3 other voices, or all 3 of them. 2, because 25 is smaller than 75, what it tells me is we have to fight to lean into what he's saying, what God is saying, and work to shut up the rest of the voices. So if the elephant starts talking to you while you're driving, I want to encourage you to just go ahead and tell it to shut up and replace that thinking with other thinking. And it's not until you capture that thought and bring it under the authority of Christ that you're going to overcome the power of that thought in your life. Because the Bible says that as a man or a woman thinks in their heart, so are they. So is he, right? Turns out new discoveries have shown that there's the same biological matter that is resident in a particular portion of the brain that also resides in the heart. So it is possible biologically to think here and not here. And that's a topic for another conversation. So the idea here is you really got to take into captivity what you're saying and what you're thinking. What you're thinking because it's for you, what you're saying because it's for everybody else. And what Gallup is suggesting is if you're looking for language then on how to express that, then the strengths language is what they're proposing. Because it's laced with all of the great and the opportunity and the positive of what an individual is able to accomplish. And it's very inviting. It's a way for me to speak to one of you and call a better version of you out from where you are and invite you to a stronger tomorrow for you and for everybody else around you. And one of the decisions I've made in my life is that I will not stand by idly and watch somebody near me not amount to the fullness of what I know is within them. I just refuse to allow that to continue to happen. And so I'm going to try to make it my job to, as often and as frequently as possible, be the provocation that could cause this person to make one step that strengthens who they are as an individual. So the idea of words, what you do with them, how you work with them, how you think about them, that one's really important. Here's a second story that I want to give you about that. You want to contribute? Can I keep going? Free reign. I got to take it while I got it. Okay, so I grew up in Africa, right? I grew up in South Africa. I got bare feet. I'm running around outside. Summer, winter, doesn't matter. We're out like riding my bike until the sun goes down, playing outside in the yard. And during the summer breaks or the school holidays, both my folks were working. As we were old enough, we were able to be at home on our own. And I'd be hungry. It's lunchtime. So I go home, and I climb up on the counter, get the plate out of the cupboard because I can't reach. I'm shrimpy. I can't get up there, so I got to climb up there, get that, and make myself a sandwich. Well, it's fine. But one day, I did that when my mom was home. And I jumped up on the counter and then started getting the plate, and she goes bananas. She's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I got to get off of there. Look at your feet." Well, it didn't occur to me. I look at them like, "Whew, that doesn't look good." You know, all of the fields and everything that I've just been running around on is now on top of the countertop. And she starts to lose her mind. Like, "What are you doing? Do you understand about germs?" Blah, blah, blah. And she goes off, right? "This is wrong. You don't do this. We don't climb on the counters," and, telling me all the things. So I'm starting to shrink back because I'm realizing I've done something wrong now, and I got, and it weighs on me because I like for them to be happy. I want them to be good with me and for us to get along well. So I don't like this. And what I learned over time, being told that over and over and over and over and over again, is that you are wrong when you do that, and when you do this, when you do that, and when you do that, and when you do that. Okay, we're talking about words, right? So I just want to pause here for a second and say, when you use the word wrong, that word was originally created as a legal term. It implies something is legally permissible or legally not permissible. It's either right or it's wrong. And so if you tell me that I'm wrong, it's one of the most definitive, sort of devastating kind of words you could use on me because it covers my whole thing. Like it covers me completely when you tell me that. What I would like to propose for you and I, when we're thinking about how we use our words and how we raise our kids and interact with other people, is that we reserve the word right and wrong exclusively for things that are illegal, immoral, or unethical. Let's leave right and wrong in those categories. Illegal, immoral, or unethical. And let's call the rest of it learning. And here's why. Because if I'd been on the counter, my mom catches me, she goes to learning instead of declaration. "Son, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I'm hungry, happy to make myself a sandwich, want to do that, but I can't reach the plates." "Oh, I see that. Well, what could we do?" I'm like, "Well, I know you like a clean counter, but is there a way we could leave 1 or 2 plates out on the counter until I'm tall enough to reach them?" I mean, I don't know how long it's going to take, but it seems like a reasonable, a brother's got to make a sandwich. What do I got to do here? And she could go, "I see the problem. This makes sense." Or we could negotiate some other kind of answer, and we'd land on an answer, and I would leave feeling heard. I would leave feeling understood, and we would both have a solution that's workable for her and for me. I would have none of the painted black thing that happens when you say to somebody, "You are wrong for doing that." It's very committed and sort of extreme. So I advocate for, is it possible then that we move behavior that's either immoral, illegal, or unethical into right and wrong? Because that's a right place for it. And let's move everything else into a place of learning where we're going to contend together and find the right answer. Now, if you have a child that's still learning boundaries, shall we say, and you need to negotiate a little bit more firmly than the next person, press in with your parental authority as you should. But beware of right and wrong and what kind of a mark it can leave on your kids as they grow older. Ask me why I know. Is that good? All right. We ready to move on?
Yep.
Okay.
Affirmation.
Yes. So, there's an epidemic in our world, and the epidemic is this, there is no affirmation in our world anymore. There's lots of praise, but there's no affirmation, and the two are not the same. See, if I wanted to praise you, all I got to do is tell you something that's helpful about your thing, and it can be real sloppy. Like if, it's Clint, right? let's say Clint and I were friends, which is a long shot, but let's just make it up, right? And let's say he came over to my house, said, Clint, man, can you come help me this weekend? This flipping couch is heavy. I got to get it upstairs. And he's like, fine. Okay, so he screams over for 30 minutes because he's busy working, and he just helps me take that up. When he leaves, I tell him, bro, man, thanks for helping me with the couch. Like, I couldn't have done that by myself, right? That's praise. I've given him a thank you. I basically just tossed the praise over the fence on his side of the fence. As long as it lands somewhere on his yard, it's fine. It counts. Like I could have seen him the next weekend at church and said, hey, man, thanks for coming over and helping me last weekend. There's nothing specific about it whatsoever, but it's praise, right? And it feels good. When you get praise, you feel good, but it's like a Snickers bar. You know, it gives you a high for about 5 minutes. It's short-chain carbohydrates. So after that, you know, you die off on the other side, and then you're back to normal again. Affirmation, though, is completely different. See, if I was actually going to affirm you, I have to know something incredibly personal about you, and I have to reference it in order for the affirmation to be effective. And here's the trick with it, though. If I don't get it right, you feel like I'm kind of massaging up to you to try to get something else from you. It feels like manipulative almost. It feels like a politician, you know, kissing babies and shaking hands. It's like, oh, that's slimy. Get off of me. What are you trying to do? Yuck. I don't want that. So the risk with affirmation is it either hits or it's like it counteracts what you're trying to do. It either works or you feel manipulated, which is not the outcome I'm looking for at all. So it's a high-risk stake. Because it's a high-risk stake, and we don't know enough about each other, Gallup says it takes 3 to 5 years of working relationship to get to know somebody well enough that you could affirm them. And do you know how long people stay in jobs these days? 2.4 years, 2 years and 4 months. So we're not even staying in work long enough to be able to get to know each other well enough to be able to affirm one another. And so consequently, at home and at work, affirmation is missing. It's just missing altogether. And it's a rare commodity, and we need it. We need it desperately. So if I knew something about Clint, let's say that he has responsibility, just hypothetically, which I know he does. And he comes over, and I say to him, hey, thanks for coming over. And then I touch on his responsibility. I knew if you said, I'll be there at 10:30, but I can only stay 15 minutes, that not only would you be here at 10:30, that I could reliably depend on how much time you're going to be there to help me. And that is a blessing to me. It helped me be ready, and so I was really excited when you came. Now, I just thanked him, but I also affirmed something that's inside him. And he knows I know what I'm talking about because he feels seen. If you want to turn this around the other way, one of the ways you know you're not getting affirmation is that you feel invisible. If some version of this statement, like you think to yourself, does anybody even see me in this house? If you have any version of that phrase coming up in your head, in your heart somehow, then affirmation is missing at a pretty significant level in your life. And the reason it's missing in your life and mine is because we don't have the language that makes it easy for me to affirm you so that I know you and you know that I know what I'm talking about, so it's meaningful, because we just don't have the right tools. StrengthsFinder gives you the ability to affirm people if you know what their strengths are. I can call Clint out, and I can call his responsibility out, and I can tell him thank you, but I can also recognize his responsibility in that moment. And when he leaves him, he's like, you know what, that was cool, man. He saw me, I appreciated doing that. If he asked me, I'd do it again. When you affirm somebody, I'm telling you, I want you to try this. I'm actually giving you a dare. I really want you to try this. I want you to pick one person you know, pick one of their strengths, and just find a way to affirm them around that strength. And just see if you don't create a junkie out of that person. Because there's such little affirmation in the world, they're going to come running to you for it over and over and over again. All we want as people is to be seen, to be validated, to feel like my contribution matters. The uniqueness of who I am is visible to somebody else, and it makes a difference. We all want this. We need it desperately. We're actually made for it. And when we don't get it, we feel empty somehow. If you've ever seen a horse that doesn't have what it needs, like at a mineral level, they will eat the snot out of anything they can get their teeth on. They're a menace when it comes to that kind of thing. They'll chew the fence. They'll take the paint off of your car. They'll chew off the grill on your car. They'll bite all the plants. It's like, what the heck has gotten into this horse? What they're doing is it here? No. Is it here? No. Is it here? And when they find the thing that's got the nutrient that they need, they just eat the crud out of that until they feel satisfied again. And the drive to find that thing is relentless. Well, the drive for you and I to find affirmation is relentless. And when we find somebody who gives it, it's like water in a parched land. We just feel like, oh my God, that is healing something in me when I get that. I have to have it. So I want to encourage you to find ways to do it to your kids and do it to your spouse, because I'm telling you it's missing in the world today.
Yeah, I think, in our marriage context of being seen and being heard, when Alan and I look back over 26 years of our marriage, isn't it frustrating when the same argument keeps resurfacing? I remember I'm guessing year 13 or 15 or something, I remember feeling discouraged. Like, are we seriously still having this argument? And maybe it resurfaces over a different scenario or situation, but you hear that reverberating same theme coming to life in the argument. And I think that a part of feeling affirmed and seen and heard in our marriage is when we are taking that time to really hear and listen to the other person and their perspective, and not a place of, I want to be heard and understood, but I want to hear and understand you. And so this exercise in affirmation is a way that you can tune in to how the other person thinks and how they are processing, and trusting that a balance of the two of you is what's better than it being my way or it being my way. So I feel like some of those places of affirmation in us that have brought the breakthrough of our communication has been what Alan mentioned earlier, that listening place isn't just being quiet. It's really hearing the heart of the other person and understanding where they're coming from, and being willing to compromise on my part makes for a wholeness in being seen and understood, and breakthroughs happening in those loops that we tend to get in of arguments or misunderstandings. When you're looping an argument over and over and over again, something has happened along the way that you're not really being heard and you're not really listening. Because it's manifesting, that argument is manifesting in yet another place. To you, it might seem like a completely different argument, but it's actually that core never got taken care of. The core issue of the heart, the core issue of feeling seen or heard or understood still hasn't been addressed. And then God gives us lots of opportunities through marriage for it to come back around again and again. So instead of going around that mountain again, trying to get to, okay, the issue at hand, the thing we're arguing about isn't the thing. The thing is the deeper issue that we haven't touched yet, and that's why it's being brought up yet again. And in this space, what I want to say to you, get help. If you have a mountain that you've been circling over and over and over again, it's most likely that both of you are having a hard time seeing the other person's view. So Alan's written a marriage book, which I guess means we have a perfect marriage. We've gone to counseling a number of times throughout the 26 years that we've been married. And I mentioned earlier, sometimes in seasons changing, it's helpful to go and speak to somebody. that can help be that referee, that can help be that person that will hear both sides and reflect back to you the things that you're saying, and without their skin in the game. So we're both pastors at our church. We've gone to counseling. We've been married 26 years. We've gone to counseling. We have a really great, strong marriage, but it's because when we've hit roadblocks, we've said, help. I need help. And so can I just implore to all of you to not let pride get in the way of getting the help that you need for an amazing marriage? Because we want you to be together for till death do you part. That's right. How long.
So one of the ways I want to help you find how to build affirmation into each of your lives is this exercise that's up on the sheet on the screen over here. So if you've taken your strengths and you have your results, what Gallup did is they either emailed you or put in your account this sheet, this result. It's your insight report. So if you grab your insight report and then highlight the lines in the descriptive paragraph that really stand out to you, and have your spouse do the same thing for all 5 of your strengths, then go out for a cup of coffee and switch papers. And then I want you to take your spouse's, take strength number 1, and read the whole paragraph to him or her. But then as you get to the highlighted line, read the highlighted line and then stop. And then tell your spouse how you see them do that thing that they highlighted. It's a much more pleasant version of, I saw what you did last summer. Right? You're kind of catching them doing something really good. And so for Stephanie, she has this amazing ability to relate very quickly to people. And so I might say to her, sweetheart, last weekend when that couple came in the door, remember you were talking with them, and then she started telling you her life story, and you pulled her aside, and before 5 minutes were up, she was crying, and she felt so seen, and then they caught us afterwards and just thanked us for that. Like, you do that all the time. I don't even know how you do that. It's so amazing. Like, we need more of that. The world needs more of that. Can you do that some more? Like, that fills your tank. That feels like, oh my gosh, I'm seen right now. This is awesome. So print those sheets out, do the highlight thing, and go out for some coffee and switch, right? Another series of questions you could ask each other is take one strength at a time and have the other person answer the question. So let's do it, sweetie. You ready? In your strength of relator, the way that you relatorize. You with me? Okay. So complete the sentence. I am in the relator channel.
I am excited when I connect deeply with somebody.
Okay. See how there's no rules. They're going to want more explanation. I am what? No, I'm not telling you anymore. I just need you to talk to me from your relator because it's going to tell me more. I will.
I will ask questions that I feel like are meaningful to others.
Yes, you will. I love. Not me, something else. Relator. Just
I do love you.
Yes, I'm grateful for that.
I love long lunches with girlfriends.
I need
to have your eyeballs looking at me when we talk.
Very true. I bring
a sense of people feeling heard out and who they are being known.
Yeah, I see that. I hate. Drives me crazy.
I hate small talk. I hate talking about the weather.
See how just those few, like 5 really simple questions, but channeled down one particular strength can tell you so much about how the person thinks about that one particular strength? It's kind of fun. So exercise like that will be good to consider. All right, I want to move on because I know where we're going and I'm watching the clock. We have talked about counterfeits, and we've talked about the 4 voices, and what and how we speak. Okay, so this is the next point I want to get to because this is where all the fun is. So the surprising thing about strengths is that it affects more of your life than you suspect. And what Gallup has done in strengths-based leadership is break all 34 strengths into 4 categories. So there's a group of strengths that have to do with kind of getting stuff done. They're executing strengths, and that's the first category that's there. There's a second group, and all these strengths have to do with kind of the work that you would do if you were influencing a group, influencing people, influencing change. So they're all influencing strengths. There's a whole category of those. Then there's a group of strengths that have to do with building relationships and just kind of connecting with people. It's very relationally oriented. And then the last group of strengths are strengths that connect with or fall into this category of strategic thinking, kind of beginning with the end in mind. So there's a specific grouping of strengths that falls into each one. So they look like this. These are the executing strengths. They all, in their own way, move toward getting stuff done. Turns out I have 2 of these. So out of my top 5, 40% of what you get from me has to do with getting stuff done. I have 2 executing strengths. You see how that works?
I have 2 also.
Yeah, you also have 2. Then in the relation or influencing category, I have 0. So don't come to me if you want this to get done, because I can't help you. I'm going to reach into the bucket to try to influence people, and my knuckles are going to drag the bottom of the bucket. There's nothing in there. I can't help you with this.
I also have 0 in influencing.
Well, now we're bragging.
We're not influencing.
No, we're not influencing people's. There's relationship building strengths. Stephanie has 60% of her strengths come from this category. So she has like a 60-40 split. She is relationship building, and then she likes to get stuff done. So what you're going to get from her is this interest in people and relationships, and then activities that connect to those relationships. Does that make sense? So for her, if she was going to work out reliably, she's not going to do it by herself. The most effective way for her to be motivated to work out is if she could do it with a group of other people and build relationships with those people. That's why she does Camp Gladiator, because it's all the people and the thing together, relationships. Does that make sense? I have 60% are strategic thinking. So when I show up, I have strategic thinking, and then I want to go get some stuff done. Does that make sense? So this is what our charts look like. These are mine. There's 2 executing and 3 strategic strengths in there. These are Stephanie's. She has 2 executing and 3 relationship building strengths.
Which also shows you, like, even my executing has a lot to do with relationships a lot of times.
Yeah.
So that's where you can kind of see the meld when they come together.
Yeah, so I execute against vision and strategy. She executes against relationship. See how that plays out? All right, so why is this important? Well, because strengths affect more than you suspect. For one, it affects the movies you like to see. I am a executing, strategic thinking person. I don't have time for The Life of a Dog or, whatever else you want to show. That's going to bore me to death. Give me Jason Bourne and some strategy and some folks getting some stuff done, blowing some stuff up. I'm all about that. I'm heavy. I'll get into that. Steph, on the other hand, loves to watch programs hour after hour, learning about how people are relating to each other and watching relationships. So there's people arguing and fighting with each other. I come home, that's on the television. I want to lose my mind because it's like I deal with that all day. I don't want to have to focus on that when I get home. It's not restful for me.
Yeah.
So it affects the movies that you're interested in. Do you see that? Okay.
And even in my relational strengths, I love watching whodunit things, and I like to tell him within the first 15 minutes of the movie who did it.
Oh, it's so frustrating.
And I have to tell him because he won't believe me if I wait till the end and say I knew who did it. He won't believe me. So I have to say in the first 15 minutes, so when it happens at the end, I can be like, I was right.
You see, it just drives me crazy because I'm the strategic one, so I'm supposed to be able to math it out before she does, but she uses her cheats. She uses her spidey senses, and she's like, it's the woman with the red shoes. I'm like, there's no way it's going to be her. Well, it's her. So lame. Okay, books. It's going to affect the books you read. I go into Barnes & Noble the other day. I find Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I start reading the first page. The guy says, this is a book about how to get to begin with the end in mind. to begin with the end in mind. That is like my strategic mantra. Are you kidding? This guy is a genius. So I take this book over to her. I'm like, look at this guy. It's fantastic. Look at how amazing this book is. We should read this book. You would love this book. She looks at the book. She goes, okay, that looks like it's going to bore me to tears. However, let me show you this book about female relationships and, mothers loving each other. I'm like, oh my God, that's going to kill me. I can't bear
Mothers
it.
loving each other. I would not read that book.
Okay, but still. But do you see how your strengths push you in a particular direction? They kind of encourage you to do things. You have interest in places and not in other places. How about friends? Like, I'm going to want to hang out with people that either challenge me against the way that I think or roll with me if I don't have the strength to fight that fight anymore and just want to think the way that I think and play with me. So I'm going to find interest in different places. These strengths are going to affect that. What about this? You think it could affect the way you guys behave in the bed at night? Okay.
Yes.
This quiet, oh my gosh. There's quiet in the room. Okay, so let's go.
Just remember, it starts before you get to the
Yes.
bed. So relators.
So this
Yeah.
conversation,
Where's the my hanky?
this conversation started for me when I was writing the book, right? I get to this category and God tells me, by the way, it affects sex as well. I'm like, oh no, you didn't go there. Like, no, I've drawn the line here. This is a PG book, okay? We're not doing that. He goes, go ask Stephanie. So I remember the day. I go over to her. She's in the living room. I go to her and I say, sweetheart, do you think straight? So I said to her, how many times did it occur that as a person who's driven by relationships, you started a conversation that in your mind had an amorous end, if I could say it that way, with a conversation? How many times did that being the outcome that you had in mind started with a conversation? She goes, oh, you have no idea. I'm like, oh, come on! How many times did you shoot one over the bow and I never even picked up on the cue? She goes, yeah, it happens all the time. You have no idea. I'm like, oh, this is terrible news. I can't believe it. But it's true though, okay? So, I'm not going to weird you out, but I just want to give you some hints about what's in the book, right? This is in the last, okay, if you want to buy the book, just skip to the last chapter. That's where all the good stuff is.
We're out of time, by the way.
Not for this conversation, we're not. Okay, think about executors. People who fall with a lot of their strengths into an executing category are interested in getting things done. So, they may be rather goal-oriented when it comes to turning the lights off, and that may or may not be a good thing. Maybe they drive too hard to get to that moment. Maybe there's a pace issue here that needs to be managed a little bit. I don't know. But we're very definitely goal-oriented here, and so there's an idea that we're valuing and wanting to pursue with a lot of vigor. We're going to get after that thing. We like to check boxes. I'm not happy until we haven't checked that box. So I'm just saying. Okay, how about we move on to an influencing category? Boy, it's got quiet in this room. You feel that? I'm calling everybody's stuff out. If you're in an influencing category, this is a group of people who like to see activity in others because they have been able to influence it. So, you turn the lights off, what happens? Well, the influencer likes the lights on because they want to see their influence. They want to see all that's going on, and they have a lot of courage, okay? They're like, look at all this. You come and get a piece of this right now. This is awesome. And they got oodles of confidence, right? It's spilling out all over the place, enough to make anybody else go, oh my God, I don't think you should be doing that. Lots of confidence, right, between the sheets at night. What about the folks that are driven toward relationship building, right? Could this, you're not even ready for this conversation. Could this, if this is highly valuable to you, could this affect even the positions you prefer? Because relationship builders like to be face-to-face. I want to see you. I want to see what's going on. I'll be able, in your eyes, I got to be able to see all the nuances of the emotions as they're playing out. Could that have an influence in what's going on if the lights go out? Okay, I'm just leaving it there. I'm moving on. What about strategic thinking? Strategic thinking people, for them, The joy starts way before planning the event, figuring it all out, beginning with the end in mind. They have plans. They know how they plan to get there. There's a route they like to take. If you mess with that route, then things are going to get weird. I'm just saying, there's a way to get there, and you've changed the plan now. I don't know about that. Okay, there's more detail in the book. You can go and explore, find yourselves, maybe let a little bit of extra light come into your life and into what happens in the bedroom at night. But it does. It affects even what's going on over there. You didn't think it did, but it does. Okay, let's move on. What about vacations? For me, not for her, for me. Vacations, this is fantastic because I love to squeeze all the fun out of a vacation that's possible. So we're going to get up before the sun goes up so we can watch the sunrise. Then we're going to go fishing from 6 to 8. After that, we'll have some breakfast. Then we'll go to the beach for 2 hours because then we're going to get on the horses. We're going to ride the horses to lunch. We're going to eat lunch over there, come back, swim in the ocean for 2 hours because that's fantastic. Then we're going to ride the four-wheelers on the beach, go out for dinner, and in the evening we'll go to the movies. Tomorrow, I have a whole new plan. Right? And we're going to get everything we can get out of this vacation. When we go home, it's going to be amazing.
It's going to be exhausting.
What do you want?
No, I just like to relax. I don't mind doing something here and there during the day, but I don't want to do stuff. I just want to be. Just let me be. Let me enjoy the beach. Let me enjoy a book. Don't pressure me to go do stuff. But I'm happy for you to go do stuff.
Yeah, so when we plan vacations now, we have to plan some of this, and then we have to plan some of this, and make sure that there's compromise so that we both feel refreshed by the time we get done with our break. Does that make sense? This also plays out in the way that we do, the way that we go and interact with friends. Like, we used to have this thing where we got to show up together, we got to stay the same amount of time, we got to leave together. And, my nature is I like to get up early and so like if I get up at 4 and go and work out and then go to work and do all that thing, by the time I get to 8:30, my body's starting to send my brain emails to say, listen, we're shutting this section down starting at 8:30. We're just giving you advance notice, like you're not going to be able to walk from the knees down. We're just shutting it down, like that you should know. And then 9 o'clock, it just comes to the hips, like we're just turning that off too, like. So I've got to get to bed before that because otherwise I start being really weird in front of other people and no one needs to see that, right? But if she happens to be in the middle of a deep, meaningful relationship that's feeding her with this endorphin rush because it's relational and there's a strong connection, and I want to go over to her and say, hey, we got to go home. And she's like, no, do you see what's happening right now? I am loving this conversation. So the way we fixed it was we go in 2 cars. And it's really bizarre when we go to a friend's house that's in the same neighborhood. Because they see us showing up in 2 cars, they're like, are you guys okay? Are you fighting? Like, what is happening in your marriage right now? Well, because when I start getting emails from my ankles, I got to go home before stuff gets weird, right? And so I check out and I go home, and Steph stays. As long as she doesn't come home at midnight and wake me up to tell me what happened in the movie, we're good. We're good.
We hope that you have gotten some good things out of our time with you. I feel like we can talk about the subject on and on and on. We love it. And as a part of the body of Christ, we love you. We love that God has called us to great things in our marriages, and we understand that they're hard. And so we just want to pray over you. And thank you for letting us be with you today, okay? Well, Lord, thank you so much for our time together. I pray that you would further this conversation with each couple, Lord, that they would learn more about themselves and each other in a way that brings breakthrough in areas that have felt stuck, and just to also heighten the areas that have been amazing, that there would be new language and new words around the greatness in each other. And I pray, Lord, you would seal this time together and encourage these couples that they would leave here with hope and excitement for their future together. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. It's been a blessing being with you guys.